That alcohol has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, or this is a protective filter that protects our brain from toxic elements. So even chemotherapy cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. Alcohol literally destroys every cell in our body and inhibits every bodily function that we have. Alcohol causes life-threatening health issues and in some cases even death. But what's cool about this situation is that if we stop drinking, our body is able to heal. Today, you and I are going to go on a deep dive of how alcohol affects every body system, the timeline of recovery, and how kicking alcohol out of our life will have a profound effect on our mental health and our physical well-being. So if that interests you, stick around. Hi friend, I'm so glad you're here because this is a video that I've been wanting to make for such a long time. Not only am I a registered nurse who worked in the ER for 10 years, but I also am a professor and I teach this topic. I find this topic very fascinating, and in my sobriety journey, learning about the pathophysiology behind alcohol and the damage that it caused and the possibility of healing was something that gave me a lot of inspiration. But my experience as a registered nurse working in ER and trauma centers and seeing a lot of the effects that alcohol had on my patients really means that I have seen the worst of the worst firsthand. And I'm just really excited to share all of this information with you because it's not going to be just basic information, but it's also going to be pathophysiology and some personal insight and personal stories. So before we get into how alcohol affects all of the organs in our body, including our appearance, we need to talk about the withdrawal stage of giving up alcohol. So it's very important for me to say this, but when a person quits drinking alcohol, depending on the frequency of their drinking, how much alcohol they consume, the withdrawal period of time can vary greatly from person to person. So if you are thinking about quitting drinking and you're unsure of how you're going to react to giving up alcohol, then you need to seek guidance from your doctor or healthcare provider. If you're caring for someone who's going through the withdrawal period of time and you don't feel like they're doing well, you need to take them to the ER or call 911. So when you stop drinking, your body is going to go through this detoxification process, which is wonderful. But if your body has been living with a large amount of alcohol in your system at all times, alcohol is a depressant, which means that alcohol has depressed your neurons in your brain, slowed everything down. So let's talk about the timeline of withdrawal symptoms. In the acute withdrawal period of time, that usually is between 1 to 4 days after your last drink. Within 6 to 12 hours, you can start to feel the effects of not drinking your alcohol anymore, which would be things like anxiety, just feeling restless, sweating, and agitation. Our peak withdrawal time is 24 to 72 hours after your last drink. So that could be up to 3 days. And in this period of time is where people really need to be careful and seek medical attention if needed. But this is when your vital signs will be affected: increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, anxiety, insomnia, sweating, nausea, and then the possibility of having hallucinations, delirium tremens, and seizures. Then there's the post-acute withdrawal symptom, which can last days to weeks. And that includes mood swings, irritability, insomnia, and lots of cravings for alcohol. So dealing with all that could be a whole separate video. We are gonna jump into our organs and body systems. In true nursing fashion, I'm going to start with head to toe assessment of our organs and body systems and how alcohol affects each one of them. So we're going to start with the brain, and with the brain, we're going to talk about our mental health and also sleeping. Let's talk about how alcohol gets to our brain in the first place. So we ingest our alcohol. It goes into our stomach. It enters the bloodstream and hits our brain within 5 to 10 minutes. What's the most interesting thing about this is that alcohol has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. This is a protective filter that protects our brain from toxic elements. So even chemotherapy cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. How I know this is because there have been studies on children with leukemia, and they were getting chemotherapy, but they were still dying. And then they discovered that the leukemia and the cancer cells were in their cerebral spinal fluid and in their brain. So even though they were getting chemotherapy intravenously through the veins and going through the blood, it wasn't crossing the blood-brain barrier. So now in children with leukemia, they will do what's called intrathecal chemo, which is when they put the chemotherapy directly into the spinal column in order to go straight to the brain, bypassing the blood-brain barrier. But that conniving little alcohol crosses the blood-brain barrier and gets right to our brain within 5 to 10 minutes. Once it enters our brain, it stimulates the release of dopamine. Dopamine floods our brain and gives us that feeling of relaxation, calmness, and euphoria. What's unfortunate about this is that over time, our brain relies on alcohol to release dopamine and stops releasing it on its own. So we become alcohol dependent in order to feel good. I'm sure you can relate to this, but if you drink on a regular basis, sometimes you will just go through the motions and live your life and not feel good until you have that drink at around 4 o'clock. That is because our body becomes dependent on alcohol to release dopamine to allow us to feel good. Alcohol destroys the cells in our brain, our neurons, and our pathways that are in the brain. So if you've ever experienced a blackout, it is because alcohol has inhibited the function of the hippocampus to move short-term memory into our long-term memory bank. So you simply stop making memories. That's why when you wake up in the morning, you don't remember what happened the night before. It's because that memory never went and transferred into your long-term memory. Since alcohol is a depressant and it slows down our neurological function, chronic alcohol use tends to give us brain fog, problems with memory, figuring out simple tasks. It interferes with our mobility. And let's be real here, our brain controls our entire body's function and keeps us alive. So damaging our brain with alcohol affects our whole body. Patients with chronic alcohol use who have had like brain CTs or brain MRIs have been shown to have a decrease in brain mass and smaller sizes of their brain. When we quit drinking alcohol though, our brain function starts to normalize. It does take a little bit of time, so be patient. It takes time for your dopamine to start producing again on its own. Things like exercise, eating healthy, getting good sleep can help you with that. People who stopped drinking alcohol, who had that decreased brain mass and smaller brain size, actually regained brain volume and brain function over time. It also reduces the risk factors for developing cognitive changes as an older adult, such as dementia. So let's talk about sleep, because sleep in sobriety is one of the most amazing things. So what I never realized when I was drinking was I would wake up so much in the middle of the night, and I would just blame it on I'm a light sleeper, or I heard a noise, or the dogs woke me up, or my kids woke me up, or whatever it was. But I will have to say that now nothing wakes me up. So alcohol actually makes it so that you fall asleep faster, but I actually call that passing out. But so we fall asleep faster, but it interferes with our sleep cycles. Our REM cycle, the rapid eye movement, and the non-REM, which is our deepest sleep. And the REM cycle is where we sort of process emotions, and our rapid eye movement phase of sleep lasts from like 90 to 110 minutes. And that's where all of our emotional experiences are processed and our memories are consolidated. So without that, we do not get regenerative or restful sleep. We wake up frequently due to alcohol interrupting our sleep cycle. It interferes with our circadian rhythm because alcohol interferes the release of melatonin, which melatonin is the hormone that puts us to sleep. And alcohol can cause sleeping airway disturbances, also known as sleep apnea, because alcohol is a depressant. It slows everything down in your brain. It also relaxes the muscles of your throat and your tongue, causing your airway to be obstructed by your own tongue, which makes it so that you don't breathe while you're asleep, and then not breathing wakes you up. So it's this big snowball effect of waking up every time that you don't breathe. But when you have sleep apnea, you have all of those periods of time where you're really not getting enough oxygen, which means you're really not perfusing your body all through the night. This leads to obesity, moodiness, inability to concentrate, weight gain, hypertension, and an increased risk of heart disease and strokes. So once you give up alcohol, your sleeping should normalize. It may take a few weeks, because remember what we talked about when we talked about the brain. The brain is starting to wake up, meaning that it's getting very excitable, and it can make it so that you feel like you can't sleep or you have insomnia in the beginning. But do things like exercise, eat a healthy diet, have a good sleep hygiene routine, and your peaceful slumber will return. Let's talk about how alcohol affects our heart. But we can't start this conversation until we first talk about the terrible rumor going around that wine is heart healthy. This drives me so crazy when I hear people saying that.
Oh, I have red wine, it has some health benefits.
No, it doesn't. So what red wine has in it is a chemical called resveratrol. So this is an antioxidant that they claim red wine has, and that it is heart healthy. But they've actually done studies in mice, and sure enough, resveratrol showed a lot of health benefits in these mice. But in that study, the authors said that a human would have to drink 1,000 glasses of wine to get that same heart healthy benefit that the mice got. So instead of drinking red wine that comes with a plethora of negative effects to your body, you can eat things like pistachios, peanuts, blueberries, grapes, and even dark chocolate. So a common thread with alcohol and all of the organs in the body is that alcohol actually causes inflammation or triggers the inflammatory response, which causes a lot of damage, actually swelling. It impairs like membranes that are supposed to be there to be protective for us. And so when it comes to the heart and the circulatory system, drinking alcohol will increase your blood pressure. It causes damage to your blood vessels. It can weaken the heart muscle and cause arrhythmias. Alcohol can cause so much stress to the tissues of the heart and the blood vessels that they actually do a programmed cell death, which is actually the cell just kind of giving up and committing cell suicide. Drinking alcohol can cause a higher risk for strokes, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, heart disease, and peripheral arterial disease, which is when the arteries in your extremities, like your legs, lower legs, and arms, become affected. Moving on to the GI tract, we're gonna start with the liver, because of course the liver is the big gun in metabolizing alcohol, and it is imperative that we have a healthy liver if we want to metabolize the alcohol that we are consuming. But it is all connected, believe me. The GI tract, the pancreas, the stomach, the intestines, the colon, all connected. So our liver is such a hard worker. Our liver can metabolize 1 ounce of liquor every hour, and that's a healthy liver. So that's 1 ounce of alcohol every hour. So if we inundate our body with excessive amounts of alcohol, we put too much strain on our liver. It gets stressed, the cells die, the blood vessels inside the liver start to deteriorate, and our liver gets what's called a fatty liver. It makes it difficult for the blood from the stomach to drain into the liver because the liver starts to get stiffened. When this happens, the blood backs up into the stomach, and then we get what we call esophageal varices, which are almost like a hemorrhoid, if you will, or a varicose vein in the esophagus. They become bulging and thin out, and if they rupture, we get terrible bleeding in our GI tract. The damage to our liver can be mild to severe depending on the amount of alcohol, the years of consuming alcohol, genetics, etc. What's amazing about the liver is once you quit drinking, within days, your liver enzymes begin to improve, the inflammation begins to go down, and the liver can heal itself if it wasn't damaged too severely. If you have had a diagnosis of a fatty liver, over time, it has been shown that abstinence from alcohol can actually decrease the amount of fat accumulated in the liver. The stiffness of the liver tends to go down. You will see significant improvements in the functioning of your liver. So yay, hug your liver and give up drinking. For our gastrointestinal system, alcohol is so irritating to the mucosal lining of our esophagus, our stomach, and our intestines that it will damage the lining. And what's inside of our stomach? Hydrochloric acid. Now we have a damaged stomach lining and we get gastritis, inflammation of our stomach, ulcers, and bleeding ulcers. Alcohol also affects the way that our nutrients are absorbed in our stomach, which leads to vitamin deficiencies of vitamin B1, thiamine, calcium, phosphorus, vitamin D, and magnesium, all important in bone health. And vitamin B, thiamine, if we have a deficiency in that, it can actually cause irreversible brain damage. When patients would come to the ER having alcohol withdrawals, we would hang a big bag of multivitamins in an IV, and it's a bright yellow color, and it's bright yellow because it is filled with thiamine and B vitamins to prevent that permanent brain damage from malnutrition caused by excessive alcohol intake. Once you quit drinking alcohol, your acid reflux should start to go down, your ulcers will start to heal, and your gastritis will improve. Long-term abstinence from quitting alcohol will decrease the inflammation in your esophagus and decrease your risk of having bleeding ulcers. And our pancreas, part of the GI tract, so our pancreas releases digestive enzymes. Alcohol causes the pancreas to become inflamed to the point where it cannot release the digestive enzymes anymore, thus auto-digesting itself. This causes significant pain, and it's a very dangerous condition to have. I teach about pancreatitis in nursing school, and pancreatitis can lead to sort of leaky blood vessels, damage inside of the blood vessels, enzymes flowing out into the abdominal cavity, leading to sepsis and a cascade of events that can lead to death sometimes. Damage to our pancreas also interferes with our regulation of our blood sugar. Now that we've gotten the big five out of the way, let's talk about how alcohol can affect other areas of our body. So alcohol can affect our endocrine system and the releasing of hormones. It can cause infertility and erectile dysfunction in men. It can weaken our immune system and make us so much more susceptible to getting illness. Remember when we talked about how alcohol will affect the absorption of minerals and vitamins in our GI tract? Well, that affects our bones. So our bones become weak and put us at risk for getting osteoporosis. And then on top of that, it dysregulates our motor function, causing us to be more prone to falling, and now we have weak bones, so we're more prone to serious accidents, injuries, and fractures. And let's talk about our appearance. Alcohol is very dehydrating. Alcohol actually blocks a hormone in the brain called the antidiuretic hormone. The antidiuretic hormone senses the fluctuation in our hydration status and holds onto fluid when necessary. But alcohol blocks that from working, so that is why after you have that one beer, you basically pee out about 6 beers worth of volume. That is because we no longer have the ability to regulate our fluid balance. So we get very dehydrated. Our skin becomes very dry and brittle. Alcohol dilates the blood vessels in our face, and we get those spider veins and that big red bulbous nose over time. The dehydration and lack of nutrient absorption makes our hair fall out and become thin and brittle and lackluster. Alcohol is very high in sugar, and we store excessive sugar as fat in our body, so we gain weight. We're inflamed, so we become bloated. When we give up alcohol, we are giving ourselves the best gift we can give ourselves, which is a healthy body, a healthy mind, a healthy sleep cycle, and proper absorption of nutrition. I know this was such a long video, and I thank you so much for sticking around and watching it. I will be making a how to have the best night of sleep video very soon, and I hope you tune into that. I also have videos about when I quit drinking, what that was like, and I will link that here. And I am very grateful that you and I got to spend time together, and I will see you in the next video.